Okay, so, excuse me, even though I'm in my underwear, these are some of the keys to success for what I would run on as a president. One, in regards to exotic pets and animals, I want to do a federal database of proper ways to care for any animal species that is in the hands of a person in this country and has been successfully kept. So that basically is all animals. We will have a extremely thorough database where we have updates consistently on the status quo of every type of species and the way that they are appropriately supposed to be kept via the heads of every species, handlers, the handler heads, basically, like people like Jay Ogerson and stuff like that for exotics, people that are, Tarzan, anybody like that involved in exotics. You can come to me and talk to me as the president, and I will establish a database, and we can even put multiple different people and their ideals thoroughly and in extremely to a T in short sentencing, basically, to explain ways to care for said animals. And these will be the finest people that I can find on things, and we will essentially make it to where you have to at least do a certain level of care, even if you don't do exactly to a T, but there will be a real standard on care for exotic pets and any other type of animal. For instance, with dogs, and this goes for, I'm pretty sure I have to research other animals and see what their body fat percentages are supposed to be and stuff like that. But for any animal, there will be 6 different levels in accordance with the species, and it varies via species, and that will be widely known. And there will be a emaciated, there will be a thin group, and then there will be a conditioned group for the lower 3, sort of basically, and then there will be a house weight or chill weight, show weight, then there will be a fat, obese, chubby weight, and then there will be a deathly, morbidly obese, nasty weight. If you hit the midsections of those 2 groups, meaning your dog is either thin or your animal is either thin or in the range of chubby, you will be fined an extensive fine every time. And after, let's say, 10 fines, the animal will be confiscated. We will give you ample amounts of time to fix your problems. And unless you come up with a reason that is out of your control as to why this happened, and then we will help you find the appropriate responses to that, depending on if you want to keep said animal or not. We will try to help you. We can even try to help you get a proper job if we can, or something like that with Social Security. I think that that would be a really good way to solve a lot of problems with animals and stuff with dogs and things like that. If you are in the inner section of if you're in the good, conditioned, or chill weight kind of section, you'll be fine. You will be, that will be shown basically, that you are in that grouping. If you have, if your animals are at the low end of each spectrum, they will be confiscated. So unless you have some sort of good reasoning, if something happens, your house burned down and you got no money, something like that, we will get into all the plausible reasons as to why this would happen, and you could be subject to being helped and not having your animals confiscated. And this will be a federal law, and this will go for any animal species and any type of animal in this country, basically, that is used consistently. My phone's gonna die, so I'm just gonna put it right here. But is used consistently as a captive animal. You will also be able to do anything that you want with exotics federally. So, and that is based on the idea that we will have a test that you must take and pass, kind of like a bar. For species in general and for species specific to the ones that you want to own, you will have another test. You'll have like a basic and general test, and then you will on basic zoology knowledge, and then you will have a designed by me and other high-level animal keepers. I have a lot of experience in animals and can come up with really good ideas on how to test people appropriately for in general knowledge and understanding of genetics in animals. And as far as we will allow for another test per each species that you must have to pass, and all the species tests that you have to take in order to own said species. And this will be all on your dime that you have to pay for. And then, if you want, you can ask for experience basically with a helper. They will take in as many people as they can, because they will be like in the database too as well, and you can talk to them direct, stuff like that. That's what I hope to implement at some point. The Stargate idea, I'm gonna stay on the animals real quick. As far as caging requirements, I think that they should be 100 times per size of the animal. So let's say you have a snake at 5 feet long, it probably should be 500 feet in, like dimension basically. Now that is, going to maybe be problematic in the exotic animal community, so I might be willing to say something more of like 10 times. But we have to see, because I am more towards having animals have free space, just like a person. Doesn't have to be that good, but it should almost be like a zoo exhibit per animal. Now with the exotic community, they probably won't like that, and it's going to be hard to gain favor with that. I would say 10 could be fine if the animal gets out of its enclosure. Maybe we do that and spends time outside of the enclosure somehow. But 100 foot for a permanent enclosure should be probably bare minimum. I mean, it sounds like a lot, but it's really not when it's dimensional. Like when it's like, if you say 500 feet, that's about the size of this room that I'm in. So it's not that big. I think that people need to realize that's what it takes to have animals properly housed and contained, and doing well in terms of that. So I think we could do it at 10 though, and make that minimum, and I think that would at least help a lot, so long as the animals get out. If it's a permanent enclosure though, at least minimum 100. I think that would be a good idea, and then people would own less large animals, just stuff like that. It would just be, more for people who can afford to do so. I will be changing minimum wage to $50,000 for a 40-hour work week. And, if you do 40 hours, you're entitled at least $50,000, period. So, no property taxes federally. Anything over $150,000 that people make per person, they will pay taxes at 20%. I could change that to 100,000, but I think we can try it at 150 at 20%. So if you're over 150 and you're gonna have to pay the government 20%, and the government will be able to see with all banks all of your funds. That should be a new thing. We should be able to see anything revolving just regularly funds that people have, and the taxes that they've been paying on. So all that will be in bank records wherever you bank with, and if you do not bank in an American bank, or we can get a hold of it, you will not be able to do any business with America. That's what I think should happen. We are going to get our tax money, period, and you will not cheat the system whatsoever. It doesn't matter if banks are in another country or anything like that. if you go and bank over there and they don't allow it, then you will no longer, you will even possibly lose citizenship, okay, because you are cheating the system. So, and you knowingly banked with them. Now, if you didn't knowingly bank with them and they're doing this to you for some reason against America, that's a different story. But if you bank with some people and they will not allow Americans to view records so that you pay appropriate taxes, and we know where our money's going, because money is an actual government thing. So with that being said, I'm going to base it on that. I've had struggles with trying to decide about the money idea, but it is a government thing. And yes, we all live in America and we purchase things and then they're ours, but that includes money and having money. And so money in itself is a currency of America. So yes, once you buy something, it is yours, and that's why no property taxes or ownership taxes of any type, no renting type of ownership taxes of any type will be implemented. Now, if you rent somebody else's stuff, that's a rent cost, but there will be no taxes on anything that you rent, anything that you, there's no taxes on tips, anything that is like where you are renting in some way, like you're not going to rent to the government, so actually, I'll decide on, renting stuff if you're paying rent, if you pay taxes and stuff like that. Any transactional thing should be paying taxes, but you will not pay a property tax on top of that. That's what we'll do. So if you're renting out, yeah, that is a transaction with the person who owns it. Yeah. So it's different. But yes, anything in society that is, what's it called? Like that is, tax, like for a sale or whatever, renting stuff out, anything like that, it will have a sales tax of 5%. And I agree with cutting all the spending and stuff like that. But I think that, it's a good idea to cut as much government officials as possible and government bullshit as possible. And, we can do that, and then we can implement things such as a database for exotics and whatever. And this is a federal law, so anybody in the state, any state here, can own any sort of exotic that they want to, so long as they register it and everyone knows what animals that you have. And you have to probably I will have people register their litters and everything, and based on your admissions, if you don't even put stuff in that database, then you will be investigated by a task force that is trying to prevent as many problems with exotics as possible. So we also will be combating people letting animals out in the wild. Now, whether we can house them or not is based on the agency, okay? And when they come into the wild wilderness areas and try to find, let's say, a Dumeril's boa that was escaped. Now, if we get them and we have to put them down, then we will. If we can house them with some people who can take in stuff, and we will do stuff via that database, I think that would be a really good idea. I want to have it to where everybody who owns an exotic is the same way that everyone who owns a gun is in a database, and has to have those two things on their license that says I own guns or I own exotic pets. I don't want to crowd the license, up with information, but it will say if you own stuff like that, and then any cop will be able to know that just by looking at it that you are possibly carrying something, and in the database it should show that you are, essentially. Now that could be, a problem with hackers and stuff like that. So if any of this becomes like where I feel like it's a lot of money that's just spent on hooflaw because anybody can just hack stuff and change things and whatever, then it will go to paper stuff, and you will be like, if you write something down, and I mean there's going to be problems with that too, but and so I think it should just be, where we all have videos and stuff, maybe of like signings, or we can do something like that where we promote people, like, you know, stuff with BS happening, you know, with that, and they promote the safety of themselves and whatever. But you know, it should be very lenient on stuff like that, like, and you have to have evidence to convict people about stuff. But yeah, I think that we should have a serious law in place and database maybe on those things, and you have to take like a test. That would make logical sense to me. What else am I thinking? So with the Stargate thing, I think that's a good idea with AI to have everything hooked up to where the best doctors can give advice in medical fields, and then the doctor has to go based on that advice, based on rank of doctors. I think that's a good idea, which is the idea I gave Trump and Elon. I think that, you know, a lot of this stuff is, you know, problematic within health, where people are given false medical practices or things that are widely disputed, and it causes problems in the medical field and just things of that nature. You know, I like the idea of, you know, as far as wars and stuff, I like the idea of staying out of problems. Now, if it's a righteous thing to do or something that looks like it's going to be strong for the country, then that would be a plausible thing to do, possibly. And, you know, but otherwise, to stay out of the world's problems, maybe it tops selling arms, but not so much people and manpower. We're trying to stay out of the looks of us really being, as Americans, involved. So now the status quo is the status quo, you know, in a way, but we're going to be only top selling weapons and securing our borders and country more than anything. You know, I'm trying to implement, you know, as far as escorting and human trafficking. Escorting is not going to be labeled a human trafficking thing. If the person is talking dirty, and as long as they disclose that that is what they're doing and not actually looking for a sale, they can be an escort, essentially. And if she decides, or he as an escort decides to have sex with said person upon talking dirty and upon being involved with stuff, you know, and being questioned, you know, as long as they say that they're an escort and not looking for prostitution and, you know, trying to get a sale, then they will be fine. The sale is for their time spent and for dirty talk, and that can include certain types of fantasies, including this a possible, you know, alleged sale, even though it's not. They're just really paying for time. So when it comes down to it, they have to say what they were actually doing under oath, and they have to say that they were just paying for time. So this allows for people to have choices on whether or not they want to have sex with said person, and it's not an actual sale between people of sex. As far as you know, porn, it is looked at as an art form because it is like theater, and it is educational via sexual stuff. So in that manner, regardless of anything else, it is actually educational, because people do partake in those sexual practices, and they make trends even in that, and that is legal, because that is no different than people making trends out in public, as they are, you know, when they're not working, doing whatever they like to do, and they bring that kind of mindset to the table, or just their own creativity in their art form in that regard. So yeah, I mean, as if they're acting on some level. So or they're not, and if they're not, then they are practicing what they think is a good idea, or even trying to steer people sexually in whatever way they want to, but that's no different than what the public does. So I think that that's a good idea to keep them the same too. Everyone should be tested. It should be legal. It should be illegal that you are not tested as an escort too.
escorts need to be monthly tested if they are a known escort. So that should be a thing. That will help with diseases and lot lizards from spreading a lot of problems. I think that all serious STDs needs to be disclosed to partners legally around the country. I think that the social stigma needs to slow down about sexually transmitted diseases. It's not like everyone just is nasty and stuff like that. It just happens. It's a random occurrence and random thing. So unless someone knows and still wants to do it, that kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, it's just like, that's a problem. So yeah, I think that, you know, as far as that kind of stuff, it could be a real issue, and I think that it needs to be changed. A lot of things need to be changed in the government, and you know, going forward, people need to start understanding, you know, a lot of changes will, that, you know, a lot of other things, and that changes will happen. I think in general, the country is not a Christian country. It is a free country, and that included at the time Christians being highly implemented here. And I think Christian culture is so dominant here that it is in part highly Christian, but it is not like a designated realistic, you know, only Christian country. It is a freedom country, so with Christianity dominating, so it's a little bit different. But yes, you can kind of call it a Christian country. But federally, you can do sperm donating so long as you do not remain friends with the people that you donate to, and so long as it is that you are not in that child's life. Now, when they're 18, you can be in the said child's life if they decide, but until then, they are a child, and their parents make the rules, but they are supposed to be not, you are just a donor, basically. Even if you become friends, or try to, excuse me, you have to stay away from said child, I think, is a good idea. Now, that could change. I don't really see that much of a problem with it personally, so long as, you know, the parents will decide your involvement, which I think is probably the better idea, actually. But so that's one thing. And, you know, just stuff like that, I think having healthcare is a good idea, but not to where it's exceedingly helpful to where it hinders people's progress in the workforce, and their own mental and physical hardiness progress. You know, like, you want them to be on their own somewhat and become adult-like, but yet at the same time, you know, having some help when life is hard is the whole reason why we have civilization and society. We all don't brave the wilderness on our own. We all don't brave the darkness. We all don't brave the foreign entity at the door, you know, by ourselves. So that is going to be included in our society. Stuff like that. You can marry whoever you want to. It has to be within the human race, though. You are not going to marry a frog or a reptile. That is ridiculous. You know, it is bestiality if you partake in any sexual practices towards another animal, type species of animal, and is morally ridiculous. You know, if you eat people or sacred animals, we will make the main pets a sacred animal in this country. Dogs, cats, things like that will be sacred. If you eat outside of the designated large animal groups, like if you eat dogs and cats, I think it should be like maybe just those two. But if you eat dogs and cats as the two sacred animals, the watcher, let's say, of the day, and the watchers at night, you know, or the You know, almost like Egyptians, they worship cats and dogs, you know. So we will do that. Those are the two main groups. And that's the lowest multiple. So, you know, you have more than just one, so you have a group. Yeah, I think that that's logical. All other animals you may eat. Now, that could change. I might add parrots and basic other, you know, types of animals, let's say, you know, that are historically pet animals. But I don't want it to get too much and to have it proceed into all these other things. Now, that is unless you are in need of sustenance and you are about to die. Then, you know, it's all bets are off and survival of the fittest. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I mean, as far as yeah, the age of people watching porn, I want to maybe keep it at 8. I want to keep it at like when they're an adult. But I'm thinking maybe having it at like 13 or when they're becoming into puberty is an okay option somewhat too. But adult stuff is a good idea. And, you know, I will see on that. But I'm thinking on that kind of premise. I want to do, you know, I want kids maybe to not have their cell phones while at school and they're in class. I think that they should have like a cell phone depository thing where they keep their cell phones at a high school, and they're not touched by any faculty and they're kept under lock and key or something like that. And, you know, they put like some sort of designator on the cell phones, or they can keep them in their own lockers, let's say, but they can't have them out in class. Something along that nature. I'm thinking that's kind of the way. And every school should have metal detectors and security teams, mandatory, with firearms and good, you know, reputation as being a real warrior for, you know, the good of mankind kind of thing. I think that all airplane lines need to have mandatory security in there, and that includes for boat tours, and anything needs to have some level of mandatory security, whether it be at least 2 personnel or something like that. We need to start regulating things a little bit differently to make it better. You know, I think that abortions should be where at 5 months the baby's usually conscious at that point. So once they're conscious, you can no longer abort unless it's a very dangerous or harmful illness that will affect your body and your mind. If you are giving birth still after 5 months, and that would be the only time you can abort. And what else? If they have a child, I mean, if you have a child still and you waited over fine, if we waited under, what was I trying to say? If you waited under after 5 months, then you will have to give the baby up to adoptive services, which we will pay for, Social Security wise, stuff like that. I'm gonna improve a lot more of stuff, so just stay tuned, and I'm gonna get to the bottom of how I'm going to run exactly on stuff, and I will do a lot of good in regards to that. I do want people to have some level of health care and some level of disability, you know, Social Security, so that if it affects your job and only affects your job, then you will get some sort of level of government paycheck. So something like that. So yeah. Stay tuned.